Good morning, I'm Linny Oliphant, the Product and Destination Development Manager here at SSDA. Welcome to Cycle Tourism, Cycling Started Here. We are recording the session. The format of the webinar today will be 3 guest speakers who I'll introduce in one moment, who will each speak for 15 minutes. We will then have a question and answer session in the 15 minutes at the end of the webinar, but do please feel free to pop any questions in the chat box as we go along, and we'll go through those at the end. We are very excited as we count down to the summer of cycling, and we are set to be Scotland's leading cycling destination. And we of course boast a very relevant USP in that cycling was in fact invented here in the south of Scotland back in 1839. As communities and tourism businesses collaborate to celebrate and develop cycle tourism, I'm delighted that we have the following guest speakers with us today. First of all, we have Senga Greenwood, the Development Officer of Keir, Penpont and Tinrun Development Trust. We also have Ian Barr, the Principal Officer Events, Dumfries and Galloway Council, and Rich Rowe, the Project Manager of Tweed Valley. I'll start off by introducing Senga Greenwood.
Yeah, so thanks for the introduction, Linny. Yeah, Senga Greenwood, and I'm the Development Officer. Have been in post for 3.5 years, started in 2019. So just to give a bit of context, Keir, Penpont and Tinrun is in Upper Nistey on a very beautiful part of Dumfries and Galloway. We've got lots of lovely sort of hills and mountains around us. So the trust itself, there's a population of 1,015 people, and we've got 233 members who get weekly bulletins. They also get updates on all the activities we do, but we really promote cycling heavily because we do have Kirkpatrick Macmillan, Smiddy and Grave in Keir, and we really leverage that and have done sort of since I started to try and put cycling on the map and give him a profile that sort of has not been really promoted heavily up until now, really. So could we just go to the next slide, please? Is it Morag? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I'll just quickly run through, because I'm unashamedly giving a bit of a promotion for KPT, but really try to do good comms, communications. So there's a weekly bulletin goes out, and that's normally about 3 pages. So there's an example of it down in the left-hand bottom page there. And it's not just sharing about what we do necessarily, but we share other activities and related subjects, whether it's cycling or activities happening in Thornhill. And we've also got, I use Facebook quite heavily, not just for cycling activities, but we've also got our community cafe and our community garden. So quite a number of activities happening in quite a small area. Okay, next one, please. Thanks, Morag. All right, so back in August 2020, we worked with Cycling Scotland, and I have to give them great credit because they've been a delight to work with and have supported and sponsored financially quite a number of our activities. But we wanted a cycling friendly communities fund, and we got those the bike maintenance stations. So the yellow thing you see in the middle slide there, that tall Turvek, they're made in Poland, great piece of kit. There's cyclists that come from all over that say, my goodness, where did you get that? So I think they were around £1,000, but there's all sorts of technical equipment in there, tools and so on, as well as a hydro pump, so you can pump up your tires. So we have one of those in each village. We promoted lead bike rides, and we also got some bike maintenance, some trail maps. So we've got one in each village that can just show both locals and visitors some of the good bike trails and walking trails around the area. Some of those are core paths, some of those are just smaller paths that we try and maintain ourselves with the help of volunteers. And once again, very fortunate to be able to deliver all this, because as one part-time staff member, everybody else is volunteers with all the work that we do. Okay, next one, please, Maura. Okay, so these are interpretation boards which were part of the Cycling Scotland funding. And that's just to give you an idea of some of the trails, but also we try to put landmark, whether it's history, arts, crafts, but as you can see, we quite heavily promote the Smiddy there, where the grave is, and the history of Kirkpatrick Macmillan and the bike. So yeah, so they've proven to be really useful, particularly, as I say, it's in summer when we've got quite a lot of tourists coming through the area. Okay, next one. Then in March 2022, we had to demonstrate and evidence all the cycling activity work we'd done and what we'd done with the equipment we got from Cycling Scotland. So we got our cycling friendly silver status, and we very proudly have that on our office door and on the community cafe door, because we get quite a lot of cyclists come through there. So yeah, I recommend any community that's keen in promoting cycling to go for that status, because it gives you quite a bit of credibility, and it sort of gets your village behind you. Okay, each year, and I'll go on to another slide to show this, but this will be the third year, I started a celebration of cycling event. And the inaugural year, 2021, was tremendous. Ian Barr was there, and he actually did a rendition of his book that he wrote. But the slide at the top there with the Smitty, that is some of the cyclists actually coming back from the big bike-led tour on the Sunday. And there's Kirkpatrick Macmillan's bike, obviously. Then the replica bike is the one from Drumlanrig Castle. We enjoy a very good relationship with Drumlanrig just up the road, so we've borrowed that a few times for events to further showcase and also educate the young ones. There's a great photo of Ian actually doing a rendition and a reading from his book with all the kiddies and the adults sitting around. And then the slide on the right, we've got a small gallery as part of our cafe, and we've got laser cut out little Kirkpatrick Macmillan bikes. Now the key rings hanging on the rail, they're very popular. And then we've got larger ones, which our artist has put on a background, which are really pretty. So I have known some of those to actually go to New Zealand and Australia when we were cyclists here. So quite proud to say those bikes have probably gone all over the world. All right, next one, thank you. This is our celebration of cycling weekend, which I say started in 2021. We got money from Cycling Scotland for the inaugural one, and D&G Events gave us 2,000. So one of the big attractions, because we thought we needed a leader there, Macmillan Pump Tracks, who are fantastic, and you might have seen the media. Aaron and the team are brilliant, and they were at the end of the UCIs last week when they did the charity ride, the Kirkpatrick Macmillan ride from the Crichton and Dumfries up to George Square in Glasgow. So Macmillan Pump Tracks, great bunch of guys and girls. They bring instructors, they work with every age group, and the kids and the adults love it. So we have them all day Saturday, and we do family-friendly events like the fastest family lap. Yeah, and it's all just lots of fun. Aaron gets some music pumping, and it's a great atmosphere. Sustrans come and they do bike skill sessions with the wee ones. We take our e-bikes so people could do e-bike tryouts. If anybody doesn't have a bike, last year we gave people a free e-bike to do the big bike-led ride on the Sunday. We do an off-road woodland circuit for junior age groups. It's time trialed, and that's also lots of fun and very competitive, and the kids and the parents get right behind it. And as I said before, with the Kirkpatrick Macmillan antique replica bike on display in the main marquee all weekend. So that's happening again this year, and it's 22-23 July, and I specifically chose these dates to fit in with Macmillan, but it's the week before the UCI start, and I'm just hoping, there's going to be a build up, and as much as I can as a one-man band or a small, we really want to try and promote that to sort of throw the net wider, and hopefully get more people coming. It's been very much sort of Dumfries and Galloway centric. I think we'd one family from Edinburgh last year, but yeah. So get it in your diaries, and I'll be getting it on social media shortly, just leading up to that. Okay, thank you, Morag. Okay, yeah, so that's just an example of some of the posters I put out leading up to the event. And I do different posters, obviously, get registered. Oh, yeah, and the mass-led bike ride, I put that on Eventbrite. It's probably the easiest way to manage it. And as everybody knows, you just download all the entrants on the day and then just tick them off, because we need to make sure we know exactly who's on the ride. Everybody has to wear a helmet, and we have Cycling Scotland qualified leaders, one at the front, one in the middle, and then a sweeper at the back. So yeah, that's just an example of some of the marketing that I do with the posters. Thank you. Next one. Okay, so the Kirkpatrick Macmillan, the KMMM rally, this used to run every 2 years, and it was a group of sort of fairly senior riders. It was based at Barr over at Shaw Head. For one reason or another, they decided to give it up last year, and there's £3,000 sitting in the bank. And we went to a meeting to put in a verbal bid to see what we're going to do. So that has gone in to Cycling UK, who are managing those £3,000. So we've put in a fully inclusive event, pretty much reflected the original event, but we want to make this one family friendly. And we're also going to have a field just outside Pen Punt. Hopefully we're going to have a field. We're speaking to the farmer so that people could come and camp or bring their caravan, but just to make it really affordable. So that would be, they always have it in May. So fingers crossed, we should hear about that next week, actually, if we were successful in getting that funding. So just to let everybody know that that is what's happening with the Kirkpatrick Macmillan Cycle Rally that did take place for about 10 years. Okay, next one. So back in 2021, we got 3 lots of funding, and it was all very much coordinated in terms of the different funding streams supplied different parts of a cycling community e-bike scheme. So it was Cycling Scotland, the Energy Saving Trust, and the lottery provided seed funding just for some staffing and also to pay the caretaker. So having spoken to a few e-bike schemes, Auchan Cairn, I spoke to Esther at Galloway Bikes. It seemed Whispers were sort of the best for, you know, community e-bikes, but also just very easy to ride, easy to maintain. So we purchased 7 e-bikes, different size frames, and a rally cargo bike. We've had a lot of fun with them. The rally cargo bike's actually the most popular because it's the most versatile. Families take it out, and there's 2 little straps in the bucket for little kids. The bucket can hold up to 80 kilos, we know, because we've tried it. And there's also a local chap who puts his 2 dogs in it and takes them for a bike ride because the dogs aren't able to walk very far. So it's pretty functional. And once we build our path, which I'll go on about in a moment, we're building a Sustrans path, which has been 3 years in the making. We're hoping that that bike will be used for people just to jump in it to go to Thornhill to do their shopping, as opposed to people doing short 2-mile rides in their car every day. Okay, so and just to add to that, and I didn't put it in the slide, 2 weeks ago we started an e-bike tryout session and then an introduction to e-bikes. So we do that every Wednesday night, and it's been a lot of fun. And believe it or not, it's all been women that have uptaken it, young mums and 2 elderly ladies who are thinking about buying an e-bike. So it's kind of a try before you buy. So I'd recommend, if you've got an e-bike scheme, and we did it for free to make it, as again, really accessible and easy for people to do it. So we're building up the miles, and this Wednesday we're very excited because we're going to go up Marburn, and it's a beautiful ride back down Scar Glen. If anybody knows this area, Scar Glen and Shingle Glen are 2 really beautiful valleys. Okay, so that's our e-bike scheme. Next one, thank you. Yeah, so we've got 1 part-time caretaker, again, really lucky, 1 young dad in the village. Well, I say young, he doesn't think he's young, mid-40s, but he's got 5 kids. And it's basically, he is on call, and I cannot thank Christian enough for taking up this position, because he lives right near where the e-bike shed is. That was him down on the right there. Christian and I went on an e-bike maintenance course with Power Bikes, who very sadly aren't in Dumfries anymore. And the parent shop down in Whitehaven has subsequently closed too. So we're dealing direct with Whisper, and that is a wee bit of a challenge because they're based down in, I think it's Southamptonshire, but just in terms of maintenance, we've got a local guy now we've found who worked for EA Power Bikes, because that is the biggest thing, is doing regular maintenance checks, and it is pretty specialist. So yeah, as you can see there, Christian takes the bookings either direct or by email. He's got a KPT e-bike email, and we just put e-bike flyers out and about. I promote it quite heavily in social media, and I'm hoping this summer, because we missed peak season last summer, we didn't kick off till August when we got all the bikes, but just putting flyers in all the accommodation places. And just as a hint, even accommodation places have been coming to me and doing, look, can you give me information on e-bikes? Because the more we can promote what's available in the area in terms of facilities, routes, and you know, we will deliver the e-bikes as well. So trying to make it as easy as possible for people to book them. So kind of hoping for a robust trading this year with the e-bikes for visitors and tourists. Okay, next one, thank you. Just to add to, I guess, it's different tiers of how you promote biking and how you promote, you know, healthy cycling, getting people out on e-bikes and running and walking. So almost 3 years ago, we started to talk to Sustrans, who build active travel paths. And this has been 3 years in the making, and it's caused a great deal of excitement because it's very real now, because it's being built along the side of the road from Pen Punt into just before the bridge at Thornhill. And I'll explain why in a moment, because once it goes into Thornhill area, Thornhill have to draw the money down from Sustrans. You can only draw the money in the parish that you manage. So we've done loads of community consultation over the years. We've match funded it through Suez Trans. SOSI, thank you very much, came good with the final funding to kickstart the build. We had 11 people, engineers, that bid for the, sorry about that, for the construction, and it's a company, FH Engineering, based up in Lanark, so they come down every day. One of the hardest parts, I'll just say, is negotiating, and it's no surprise, with landowners. So we had a number of farmers we had to negotiate with. The majority of the land, though, was Buccleuch, Duke of Buccleuch, and I do have to thank Buccleuch, because they agreed, or the solicitors in Edinburgh agreed, after some sort of negotiation, how this is going to work. They wanted to be quite philanthropic. So 2/3 of this path is on Buccleuch Fields, Buccleuch Woods, and it's a peppercorn payment, so over 50 years. So that is absolutely fabulous. So that made it, again, much more affordable, and yeah, avoided quite a lot of red tape, having to work with other landowners. So that will hopefully be finished late July, early August. And yeah, we can't wait to get people on that path, getting them out of cars. And more importantly, the kids that go to school in Thornhill, because that's where the secondary school is, getting them on bikes so they can cycle to school. Yeah, so that's our Sustrans path. And that's, I mean, if you want details on this, that's the different phases of the path. But I will explain, once we get to Nith Bridge, that goes over to Thornhill side. The good news is Nith Bridge is a bottleneck. 2 cars go get past. It's a nightmare even at the moment. So we will be putting in traffic lights for pedestrians and cyclists, and then for cars. So we have started a wee Thornhill group. We've got them together, got 4 very enthusiastic people who are now working with Sustrans. We've done community consultation. We're now putting out a survey. So they're now on the same, pardon the pun, the same path as us with Sustrans to build that last phase of the path, which will hopefully take them right. We want it to be a safe path right to Wallace Hall, to the school. Okay, next one, thanks, Morag. And I thought I'd just put in some key learnings and challenges there. I know I'm probably speaking to the converted here, because maybe quite a few of you have already done, you know, community-led and funding projects, but having done 3 or 4 now, starting with our hydro, which was the very first one I did when we started in 2019. Then the path, then our community garden and our community cafe. There's some fairly consistent learnings and challenges with all of those. But I think, you know, number one, I put it at the top, consult with the community, get your community on board, keep them engaged, keep them informed. Even now with the path, there's been a few, let's call them rumors and misinformation going out, which has caused a few alarms. So, you know, circumvent that by actually being ahead of the game and saying, no, the path has to be this width because Sustrans and the government dictate it has to be this width for safety. Share your business plan, have a future business plan, have a post-project plan. So once it's built, once it's up and running, goodness me, you've got to think about it being financially viable. Yeah, asking questions to your funders, meeting deadlines. Well, that's a no-go. And obviously there's always funding progress reports and final reports. Be transparent. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And finally, yep, celebrate your wins. You know, share it with everybody. Everybody's proud of what we've all done. And as I say, you know, we've got to thank the volunteers, because none of these would have happened without committed volunteers as well as part of your winning team.
Senga, thank you so much. Hugely exciting times for KPT Development Trust. I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions to answer at the end of the session, Senga. Thank you. Could I please remind everyone to keep on mute and switch their cameras off as we now hand over to Ian Barr, who's going to tell us all about the exciting summer of cycling ahead.
Thank you very much, Linny, and thank you to Senga for her presentation. I thought it was really exciting that what can be done at grassroots level, and hopefully that becomes an attractive path for tourism cycling between Penpont and Thornhill and other areas, and generates business for the area. So I've only got 4 or 5 slides. I'll spend a couple of minutes on each slide, and I want to really just hopefully illustrate all of the excellent tourism opportunities for businesses on the call, for agencies on the call, around what's happening in cycling, primarily in Dumfries and Galloway. I'm delighted to be working across the south of Scotland with colleagues in the SSDA and South of Scotland Enterprise and Scottish Borders Council, but I'm Dumfries and Galloway Council's Principal Events Officer, so I'll concentrate on some really interesting, some really positive, I think, cycling developments in Dumfries and Galloway from now until September. Next slide, please. So we want just to put a 1-minute film on. Hopefully the film works okay, everyone can hear it, which was a film that was created to launch the World Paracycling Championships in Dumfries and Galloway in August.
Welcome to Scotland, the home of invention. From television and tarmac to a world famous sheep. And a little known device called the pedal bicycle. Ever heard of it? In 1839, the roads in Dumfries were long and unkind, but not for too long, thanks to Kirkpatrick Macmillan. A new machine was propelled into the world, the first pedal-driven bicycle. This new machine brought freedom. Freedom for anyone, from anywhere. Liberation, independence, equality, that's the power of the bike. Still the same after 200 years. Except for a few added bells and whistles.
Dumfries and Galloway, proud hosts of the Paracycling Road at the 2023 UCI Cycling Worlds.
Beautiful film. It was, as I say, created for the September 2021 announcement that Dumfries and Galloway is the host the World Paracycling Championships from the 9th to the 12th of August of this year. And that's obviously exciting. It's a privilege for Dumfries and Galloway to host these Paracycling Championships over 4 days. There's a 5th day of paracycling up in Glasgow on the 13th of August. And I'm working closely with colleagues in the Scottish Borders to try and encourage tourism to both the World Championship that's being held there and in Dumfries and Galloway. So hopefully people on the call are aware now that Scotland has this almost Olympics of cycling this year. And the Olympics of cycling, as it's called, it's a new initiative from the UCI, cycling's world governing body, to every 4 years bring all of the World Championships under their governance to one country. So as previously mentioned, Dumfries and Galloway will host the World Paracycling Championships from the 9th to the 12th of August. The routes will be announced in a week's time. They'll be in and around Dumfries. We'll also hear, I think, in the next couple of months, the very exciting news about the new Kirkpatrick coast-to-coast route, which goes from Berwickshire all the way through to Stranraer and Kirkpatrick. And it's believed that that route will attract tens of thousands of new cyclists to the area. I also understand that there's going to be loops that come from the main route, so that the SSDA and SOCI and all of the agencies signed up to the route promote all of the south of Scotland through this route. And it's a fantastic opportunity. It's a fantastic asset for cycling tourism for the south of Scotland. I'll talk briefly about our Summer of Cycling initiative. I'll talk briefly about gravel cycling, which is a fairly new contemporary form of cycling, an offspin of mountain biking, if you like. And I think that this is the year when everyone will I think, begin to learn about Kirkpatrick Macmillan. And I know there's many people on the call who've got a real affection and interest in Kirkpatrick Macmillan and are really excited that he's in focus in 2023. Next slide, please. So just I've touched upon this just very quickly. We expect 400 to 450 competitors. So there will be a very, very strong economic impact for the region from the competitors and their stays down in Dumfries and Galloway, their entourages in Dumfries and Galloway, and that will help support the economic impact from the event. But let's everyone encourage spectators to come down. The focus will probably be on the road race and the track events in Glasgow, the World Downhill Mountain Bike Championships in Fort William. So let's collectively do everything we can to encourage visitors down to Dumfries and Galloway over those 4 days. It's a little bit difficult to forecast the spectator numbers because previous Paracycling World Championships, there's patchy information, but there's certainly an orientation to get behind the championships, to feel that it's a privilege to host them. And Dumfries and Galloway boasts 5 of the 8 7 stains. I know they're called the 7 stains. I think there's 8 stains. So we've got the 7 stains. We've got gravel cycling becoming very, very popular. We've got a number of beautiful road routes, including the new Kirkpatrick coast-to-coast route. So, you know, we should have a fair wind behind us to promote spectators and short breaks to Dumfries and Galloway during the World Paracycling Championships. There's a lot of partnership work going on to attract spectators, and you know, that's only going to get stronger. And I'll talk about the Summer of Cycling, which is part of that work. Next slide, please. So yeah, the council is leading this initiative with a £30,000 budget. We have launched a Summer of Cycling Events Fund, and a panel will meet to award grants from that fund this afternoon. We had 10 excellent applications, and you know, I'm fairly confident that we will support 7 or 8 projects. And what we'll do is that any cycling event taking place between now and the 3rd of September, we will reach out to them and ask them to you know, put information forward on their cycling event in Dumfries and Galloway, so that we can develop a new website, and we will promote the cycling calendar for the region through Dumfries and Galloway What's Going On, who've got fantastic marketing reach and social media reach here in Dumfries and Galloway. So that there is that ongoing marketing promotion, opportunity to participate in cycling events in Dumfries and Galloway from the 13th of May to the 3rd of September, and PR support being provided by the council and marketing support as well. Why the 13th of May to the 3rd of September? I'll talk a little bit about those dates and why they were chosen when I come on to the gravel cycling slide on the presentation. Okay, one of the primary aims, apart from the development of tourism around the Summer of Cycling initiative, is to use that Summer of Cycling Events Fund to encourage the cycling events already taking place to be as accessible as possible to all parts of the community, whether it's older people, younger people, people not comfortable on bikes but want to get back into it, or people with a disability. And we feel that that's exactly the right approach and ethos and orientation to take with the Summer of Cycling in the lead up to the World Paracycling Championships. Next slide, please. So gravel cycling really is the new rock and roll. You know, it's like in the world of cycling, the Beatles, Oasis, and Nirvana have all launched albums at the same time. And apparently, the Galloway Forest Park is one of the best places for gravel cycling in the world. So gravel cycling really uses the forest roads, the fire roads in the forests. And why it's become really important is that it's recognised that you can get out into the wilderness more quickly through gravel cycling. It's recognised that you can cover more ground quickly through gravel cycling. And it's recognised now as a world championship event within the UCI calendar. So this has all happened in the last 2 or 3 years, and the subject of the webinar is cycling tourism. And gravel cycling is going to be taken forward strongly in Dumfries and Galloway by a private events company called the Red On. We are Red On. And they have spun out of Galazzo, an international events company. Now, for those on the call from Dumfries and Galloway, you're probably aware that most of our events companies and most of our events are grassroots events that have grown. So it's really helpful and beneficial to our economy to have an international events company coming in, developing best practice in environmental management, best practice in community consultation to take forward gravel cycling events. So next slide, please. We have a World Cup event, and a World Cup event is an event where the participants can seek to qualify for the World Championships. The World Championship gravel cycling has been held in Italy, Northern Italy, in July, I think. So we have the UK's only World Cup event this year. So what a boost that is to Dumfries and Galloway. And 1,100 very serious gravel cyclists are going to be on Gatehouse of Fleet's Main Street on the morning of the 20th of May, ready to cycle and do a very demanding 70-mile circuit. So an absolute incredible boost for the regional economy. And of course, everyone on the call knows the importance of trying to attract repeat visitors. So that's what we'll do with the Summer of Cycling. That's what we do in our marketing and PR work with the Red On Group, who manage this. And it should be a momentous occasion to have the UK's first World Cup, only World Cup gravel cycling event this year. The Red On Group, as I said, spun out of Galazzo, rather. Galazzo came to different agencies in the south of Scotland at the start of the pandemic and said, we would like to host a gravel cycling festival here. And they showed extreme patience. They showed extreme commitment to Dumfries and Galloway that throughout the pandemic, they didn't let that festival rest. And they postponed it until, I think it was May or June last year, when the first Raiders Gravel Festival took place. A 3-day festival comprising very demanding gravel cycling events and races with music and trade stands and entertainment in the evening. And that will return. And that is the final event within the Summer of Cycling event season. So that runs in the first weekend in September. There's also some other excellent grassroots cycling events running that weekend. That's why the Summer of Cycling runs from the 13th of May right through to the 3rd of September. And there's just some exceptional festivals and events that take place within that period. So cycling tourism can also promote other festivals and events and other attractions that take place during that time. And that final weekend, as I say, there's other cycling events. There's going to be the first Kirkpatrick Fringe. And of course, we'll encourage people to come back for the Oyster Festival and the Wigtown Book Festival later in September as well. Galazzo, now the Red On Group, have got an aspiration for hosting the World Gravel Championships in Dumfries and Galloway. So all of the development that I've mentioned related to gravel cycling can lead to a World Championship being here. And they're fine with that ambition being made public, but there are obviously private processes, business processes to go through. But it's an aspiration that is realistic and we hope will come to fruition before the end of the decade. Next slide, please. So do watch that video of Kirkpatrick Macmillan when we send out the slides. It's really nice, that that introduction to the UCI World Paracycling Championships that was shown at the start of my presentation. So Kirkpatrick Macmillan was just a very well-educated, extremely practical blacksmith from near Thornhill in Dumfries and Galloway, born in 1813, and he invented the velocipede in 1839 or 1840. And next slide, please. There are a couple of mysteries to do with Kirkpatrick Macmillan, and we'll touch upon those just in a second. So I don't know who the audience is. I don't know the level of awareness in Kirkpatrick Macmillan, but that beautiful machine that he invented, which was clearly a long way on the evolution towards the invention of the bicycle as we know it. It was invented in his blacksmiths, 1839, 1840, and it became public really to a wider audience in 1842 when over two days he cycled from Keir Mill, probably set off from Senga's great granny's house, and set off for Glasgow, and took 2 days to get into Glasgow, where he had two brothers, two very intelligent, well-educated brothers who lived in the city. And we might not have known about this ride, but on the way into the Gorbals, he had a collision and with a pedestrian, and he was arrested and spent a night in the cells. And that's actually quite fortuitous, because without the newspaper reports of that incident, there's actually very little evidence to demonstrate that Kirkpatrick Macmillan did indeed invent that velocipede. So the two or three mysteries that I find interesting is, did Kirkpatrick Macmillan come up with the term the velocipede? And the velocipede is Latin, and it means quick feet, which I like to think relates to my five-a-side skills at football, but it doesn't. So it's that combination of words to create velocipede. There is some evidence that that term may have been in use prior to Kirkpatrick Macmillan. That's very sketchy, but that's one of the mysteries. Did Kirkpatrick Macmillan invent the word velocipede? There's every chance that he did, because he was very well educated, classically educated, and his brother went on to be the head of Latin at Dumfries Academy, which apparently was the most senior position in the school in those times. But there was also, during this period, great interest in industrial development, because it was in the industrial era. And there was actually different magazines came out, and there was different mechanics institutes came out. So there was actually probably quite a lot of development around not cycling, but transport, and how to use examples from the Industrial Revolution to keep that new form of economy going. So the mystery number one, did Kirkpatrick Macmillan invent the term the velocipede? And then the other mystery is, why did it not take off? Why did this velocipede not take off? Well, it's very, very heavy. Senga will know, and others will know, it's very, very heavy. It's not easy to cycle. But that doesn't mean people couldn't try to modify it. There's a horrible word, two horrible words about how to try and create money out of new ideas, to monetize something or to commodify something. So where is the commodification, Macmillan? Did he try and get the velocipede mass produced or produced somewhere else? Previously, I thought he probably didn't. But if we think about it, a blacksmith is a businessman. A blacksmith is self-employed. A blacksmith will know the value of what they create. And there is evidence that in 1846, a gentleman in Lesmahago produced some bicycles similar to Kirkpatrick Macmillan's. And surely it was a business arrangement between Macmillan and this businessman, his surname was DL, I think. Lesmahago isn't far from Thornhill if you go through the Dalveen Pass. So I think he probably did try and get the velocipede produced more than he did? Because one of the really interesting aspects of this story is that it was only Macmillan himself who cycled the velocipede between or in and around Thornhill and Dumfries. So there's a really interesting angle to this story, which was that the machine never quite took off. So who invented the bicycle? Obviously, people enjoy the clarity of a simple answer. You know, only one person invented the radio, Marconi. Only one person invented the television. You know, I think, was that Alexander Graham Bell? So people would like to say that Kirkpatrick Macmillan invented the bicycle, but I would suggest that a number of people were part of an evolutionary period where the bicycle emerged. Macmillan, I think, has got the proudest claim to have done the best work within that period, but the bicycle really took root, the pre-invention took root in the 1860s in Paris and came to fruition with, you know, the modern bicycle coming into existence in Paris in the late 1860s. And in 1870, Paris hosted a world fair, and the bicycle really then just went from strength to strength as tens of thousands of people saw it, and many people tried it out on the streets of Paris. So that's my input into cycling tourism. Thanks very much for listening, and look forward to the discussion after the next presentation.
Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you for that insight and news on the summer of cycling. We'll now head over to Rich Rowe joining us from the Tweed Valley.
Hi everyone, thanks very much for joining the call, and thank you to Ian and Senga for those previous presentations. Whenever I see our URL and email address written down, I do wonder whether we thought that through, although perhaps maybe got Tweed Valley is another selling point. But I'm going to talk in this quite speedy presentation about cycling tourism, but quite a bit more besides, looking at it very much from a destination perspective. Next slide, please, Maureen. But first, a very quick explainer. This is us, a small area with big plans. We range from roughly West Linton in the west to just almost to Selkirk, Melrose in the east, down as far as Stowbone, Doik to the south, and then north up to around about Edelston. And Go Tweed Valley is the public face of the Tweed Valley tourism bid, which is a business-led initiative which has the ambition of turning the area into a leading year-round activity destination for all. And back in November 2019, which seems like a lifetime ago now, given all that's happened, tourism businesses throughout the area voted overwhelmingly to establish the tourism bid. And that successful ballot enabled a levy to be taken from around 100 participating tourism businesses over a 5-year period to fund investments to improve the area's tourism product. We got started in April 2020, so just in time for COVID, so that was a great start. And we were only the second such tourism-specific bid in Scotland at the time, after Visit Inverness, Loch Ness. There's since been a third come on stream at Visit Murray Speyside. Now, when businesses voted to establish the tourism bid, they identified 5 priority actions that we are now obligated to deliver as part of our business plan. Those 5 things are strong marketing and promotion, developing and supporting a year-round calendar of events and festivals, working with partners to improve tourism infrastructure, boosting corporate tourism, and business support and advocacy. Next slide, please. But why Go Tweed Valley? What do we stand for as a destination, and what do we want to be? Well, as I've just hinted there, working with and on behalf of tourism businesses of all shapes and sizes through this small but diverse area, we want to deliver an exceptional experience for visitors of all ages and interests. And our ambition is to create a strong, sustainable, massive emphasis on sustainable and high quality tourism product that's designed to put the area very much on the world map. We want visitors to come again and again, have a great time, but just as importantly, for local tourism businesses and communities to thrive and to prosper. Next slide, please. We're very fortunate, I think, in the Tweed Valley to have many strings to our bow, and undoubtedly we are best known for our strong cycling setup. Now, whether that two-wheeled fix is mountain biking, the new rock and roll, which is gravel, road cycling, bike packing, it's all here. Next slide, please. But there's also a very strong supporting cast, particularly in terms of outdoor activities. So the trail running, the walking, the fishing, the golf, wildlife watching, paddling, outdoor swimming, massive now, horse riding. Next slide, please. And then there's history and heritage. Well, we're lucky, we've got it in spades. Needpath Castle, which we've got on the slide here, Jaquare, Bow Hill, Abbotsford, and much, much more. Next slide, please. And the arts and culture side, hugely important. We have a fantastic theatre in Peebles, museums, galleries, live music, incredible literary heritage from Buchan to James Hogg and Sir Walter Scott. Next slide, please. And health and well-being. We have a range of spa retreats, including Stober Castle, Scotland's only destination spa. So we're well stocked in that respect as well. Next slide, please. And food and drink come on leaps and bounds, thankfully, but it really has come on leaps and bounds, largely, I think, driven by cycling and the demands of cycling tourists to the area. Next slide, please. And so far, we've managed to keep away from those kind of chain stores that are coming into so many towns. We have a ton of independent retailers, and that only adds to the visitor experience as well. Next slide, please. And character of accommodation. And interestingly, these are hard times, but we're still seeing businesses come on stream and start up. This is Tweed Valley Pods, which recently launched their business midway between Innerleithen and Peebles. Next slide, please. But for us, Go Tweed Valley, and I think local businesses and communities, it's about connecting threads. And I've mentioned all these different elements, not to show off at what we're lucky to have here, but because they really matter. Each one feeds and connects with the other. And we also have physical, natural connections. And I mean, what I mean by that are the various forests that make up the Tweed Valley Forest Park. And of course, many of them are cycling hotspots. Plus, of course, one of Scotland's great rivers. And the River Tweed is the reason why so many communities are here in the first place. Next slide, please. But I think one of our best connectors of all, and it's kind of a golden thread really, is cycling in all its forms. And yeah, as we've heard from Senga and Ian, here in the south of Scotland, the spiritual home of cycling, there are massive opportunities for businesses and communities to connect with something that is far more than just a sport. Next slide, please. Now, one very obvious focus here in the Tweed Valley this year, as with the paracycling and D&G, is the UCI Cycling World Champs, with Glen Tress just outside Peebles, the host venue for the mountain bike cross-country events, taking place from the 6th to the 12th of August, with 1,000 riders, hundreds of volunteers from around the world, international media attention, and around 20,000 visiting spectators expected, with a peak of 10,000 max for the Olympic mountain bike cross country on 12th of August. It really will be a week like no other for the area. And we do strongly believe that if we prepare well and do it right, the World Champs will not only be a fantastic week, but be a catalyst for many other positive developments, both on and off the bike. And one key point here is to ensure that this bike event is relevant to local communities, to businesses and residents. And that's an approach that I think speaks to all bike events and cycling tourism generally. After all, you only care about what you value, and you only value what you care about. And for me, the World Champs is in some ways an opportunity for something of a reset. In some respects, and it's a bit of an uncomfortable truth, I think, in the Tweed Valley, this is an area that has an uneasy relationship with biking and bike events in some ways. We have a lot of them. And quite rightly, this area is often mentioned in terms of what a bike mad community there is here. And that's true. That self-styled kind of bike valley where everyone loves bikes, but doesn't quite paint the whole picture, and it perhaps ignores those who have nothing to do with bikes and feel that all these bike events, despite all the hyperbole, bring little or no benefit to local communities and businesses. Next slide, please. And I've kind of lost count of the number of times I've heard businesses say, we get nothing from biking. And for those so minded, and they may well have very good reason for saying so and believing so, but for those so minded, the World Champs is just another bike event. So there's a huge engagement piece needed here, and one that we're working really hard on as we build towards August. And our aim, I think, overall is to foster that kind of Glasgow commie game spirit where local people and communities, whether they know one end of a bike from another, love biking, don't love biking, are proud, really proud to have this major international event come to their backyards. And I think really importantly, the World Champs races at Glen Tress are being delivered by ESO Sports, a local organisation based in Innerleithen. And they've demonstrated really strong understanding and desire to integrate the wider community into this event. Next slide, please. Now, while the actual racing takes place at Glen Tress, there's a huge focus on encouraging people to experience the wider area, to experience the destination, if you like. And very importantly, this will not be a huge self-contained event at Glen Tress, a huge village that caters for every possible need long into the event, which keeps people locked in with no need to head into towns or visit high streets. So instead of that, there's no parking on site. There are park and ride locations deliberately sited in nearby towns in Peebles and Innerleithen, each served by shuttle buses. There are pop-up campsites, again, each connected, particularly with active travelways, with easy links into local towns. There are hundreds of secure bike storage racks on venue at Glen Tress to encourage people to cycle in using the network of multi-use paths. Now, the World Champs, even though it's very much at the elite end of the cycling spectrum, it speaks to all. And it's that whole power of the bike message that's going out there. And it certainly speaks to our efforts, which Senga particularly was talking about, around pushing the active travel side of things, which again comes back to our destination identity and our values, because bikes and cycling generally tie in so well. It's not just mountain biking, but the touring side, road, gravel, bike packing. The messages are clear: leave the car behind, slow down, experience a place. And bikes are a means for visitors to really get under the skin of a destination. Next slide, please. A massively important part of the World Champs are the fringe events. This is a really important element. So local organisations, ourselves included, are working really closely with Scottish Borders Council on business engagement and the development of a fringe programme around the main races. Now, this work ranges from informing businesses about expected spectator numbers and their flow during the week as it builds during the week, so they can plan staffing. Really simple things like staffing, stock, resource, opening hours. Also working with local businesses on mini activations and buy-ins that kind of require little or no investment, but a bit of imagination, but all still make a difference to the visitor experience. And that could be local butchers making World Champ sausages or World Champ themed restaurants, restaurant menus. Provision of daytime packed lunches for visitors, staff dressing in biking gear, all that kind of fun stuff that makes a difference. And then the next level up, there are others that might like to do much more. Galleries having perhaps meet the artist events, the local theatre putting on bike themed shows in conversation with type events and performances, guided walks and cycling specific experiences, activities and activations. And around that, Scottish Borders Council, much like the Summer of Cycling events in Dumfries and Galloway, they have a community cycling fund with grants available, I think, from £3,000 to £15,000 for businesses that would like to have cycling specific activities and activations both before, during and after the World Champs. And the overall aim of the Fringe programme is to ensure that the high streets and towns and wider destination actually are as relevant to the event and the experience as the racing itself, with again, each feeding the other. And very happy to chat perhaps not on this call as we're running out of time, but with anybody here who'd like to get involved in some of that fringe activity, very happy to help you get stuck into that. Because if we get this right, and if we show our best face to the cycling world, then those riders, those spectators, and the millions watching on TV will see and importantly feel the welcome and want to come here again and again. And actually, that could be a possible blueprint for how other smaller but no less important events can tie in with local businesses, and for those businesses to want to tie in more closely with events and cycling tourism more generally. It gives, and all these elements I've been talking about, it gives visitors, whether riders or not, reasons to stay longer and do more. Next slide, please. But as many on this call will know, particularly those from the Borders and Tweed Valley, they'll know that the Tweed Valley has seen a huge influx of riders generally in recent years, but the infrastructure on the ground has just not kept pace. There's a real hope and I think a strong feeling now that an event like the World Champs has really focused the minds of many on the need to ensure that we have infrastructure in place. And it's basic stuff. It's not rocket science. It's toilets, it's shower blocks, it's parking, it's overnight provision for camper vans and motorhomes, it's secure bike storage. And if we are serious about being a leading destination for cycling, this is a minimum requirement. And not just here in the Tweed Valley, but throughout the south of Scotland. Such infrastructure, it meets the needs and the requirements and expectations of visitors, but crucially it also meets the needs and requirements of residents and communities to take pressure off them. And I think being serious, pan south, about this kind of infrastructure will go a long way towards ensuring that cycling is seen as a force, it's a strong force for good rather than a kind of a pressure point. Next slide, please. And the development of cycling tourism and the infrastructure that supports it is, as I say, massively important for the whole south of Scotland. And now is a time of opportunity and huge momentum. The World Champs, the launch of the Kirkpatrick C2C cycling route, which we've been hearing about, Destination Tweed source to sea trail along the length of the Tweed, a multi-use path, a mountain bike innovation centre coming to Innerleithen and an associated bike park. Incredibly exciting times, and not just for the summer, but for many, many years to come. Next slide, please. And in this final slide, I mean, as I've tried to convey, and I hope I have, cycling is such an important part of our identity as a destination. It's absolutely vital. But we need to challenge ourselves as well to make sure we're ready for it. Cycling tourism can only be strong and realise its full potential when all the elements I've been talking about are in place, and those elements which ensure that visitors have the very best possible experience and local businesses and communities are fully plugged in. And that's both the opportunity and I think the challenge as well. So that's me. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you very much, Rich. You certainly have conveyed the opportunities that cycling presents to the south of Scotland. We're slightly tight for time now, but I would like to invite any questions, please. Senga, could I ask a quick question, please? Obviously, with the Kirkpatrick coast to coast as the main artery running west to east or east to west, depending on where you join it. We are obviously aware of the Kirkpatrick Macmillan loop up to the Smiddy and to the Grave. Now, you've mentioned the Wednesday evenings with the e-bikes. Could you tell us a bit more about that and how businesses could engage with that and perhaps come and view the destination?
Can I just go back to the Kirkpatrick Macmillan coast to coast?
Yes.
We're actually talking with the web designers, which you'll be across, because they've got a facility and a drop down for detours. So there's a straight, route coast to coast, but then there's also places of interest. So they've committed, because I said it would be so remiss, and they were aware of this, not to have a detour that leaves Dumfries over to Regals, Dunsker, into Keir, hopefully, and I'm completely with Rich here, give them reasons to stay. So other drop downs are accommodation, what to do in the area. So we're going to feed that into the web and the map designers so that people do have the option to take a 1 or a 2 day detour before they join it again up over the M74, up through Dalveen, which is also a lovely cycle ride, and then join it over at Moffat Way. E-bikes, you can book it online, as you saw by my slide. The course itself was only running for 5 weeks, and as I say, it's just local women at the moment, but there's a local man who is out every Saturday, Sunday, and he variously takes people on bike-led e-bike tours. So what I've committed to do is say, look, if you've got anybody that's interested, we are happy to give an e-bike for £10 a day or for a ride. So the course is free, but thereafter, if you want to take a bike out, it's £10 a day, which is exceptionally cheap when you look at other commercial e-bike hire places. The going rate's about £40 a day. But we're lucky because it's subsidised. You know, it just has to, the e-bike scheme just has to wash its face, and the main costs now are maintenance and paying our e-bike caretaker, who basically takes, you know, very little. And and again, he's partly a volunteer, so we're very lucky. Has that answered your question, Linny?
Yes, certainly. I think it's hugely exciting. We were recently up at Visit Scotland Connect in Aberdeen, and the Kirkpatrick Macmillan story is of huge interest to everyone. And I think there's great opportunities for businesses in the Borders and Dumfries and Galloway to liaise with you, Senga, if they may, to look at developing experiences and weaving the Kirkpatrick Macmillan story into the experiences that they offer. If that's the best way forward for them to contact you directly on that.
Absolutely. No, I'd welcome that. That. You know, the more feelers we have out there and feeding in, the better.
That's great, Senga. Thank you very much. Thank you. Would anyone like to ask any questions?
I've just spotted 2 questions in the chat, actually, 2 really good questions as well. The first one being, has the route been published? So the Kirkpatrick C2C, South of Scotland's coast to coast. It has not been published yet. However, just this morning, we have released further information about the route with all its different stages to the press. That information is now live on the SSDA website. It's also coming out on our social channels shortly. So just a quick overview of the route, perhaps, for those who aren't aware. As mentioned, it's running 250 miles, Stranraer to Eyemouth, west coast to east coast, or the other way around, depending on how people prefer to cycle, taking in a whole variety of towns on the route. SSDA's role will be to promote the route from here on forwards. We're expecting a launch in July, so wonderfully in time for the UCI World Championship, with the hope that some of the visitors will be quite excited and maybe spend a few more days to take in some of the stages of the route. The second question from Esther, which I think are fantastic questions, that as part of tourism development, there has to be a balance between highlighting all of the different opportunities around cycling, not just mountain biking, not just gravel biking, but also, of course, road cycling and accessible cycling for all ages and for all abilities. And I think, Rich, you made a really good point around that as well, that obviously in the Tweed Valley, you're really well known for mountain biking. And over in Dumfries and Galloway with various gravel events, world-class gravel events, you know, there is this draw for all of these enthusiasts and really keen cyclists to come in. But actually, we also have routes across the south of Scotland that are suitable for a variety of abilities and ages, whether that is the Border Loop route, the Borders Abbeys route as well, where, you know, road cyclists can come in for a day or two. But what we also have to work on, and I'm going to take this away as a comment for the SSDA and for Scotland Star Steers, how do we showcase that actually there is all of these opportunities, such as the Kirkpatrick Development Trust with e-bikes for hire, that locals, that families can come in, hire a bike and just have a really fun day out. And one of the items that we actually want to look at over the next couple of months in time for the launch of the Kirkpatrick C2C is also how can we highlight that actually a lot of our attractions have cycling facilities where you can leave your bike, you can visit, and you can then cycle back to your accommodation, whether that's a self-catering cottage somewhere or a hotel. So I think it's a really important point, and we will be really keen to work with businesses and with organizations on that in the coming months to highlight that. And I think, Rich, you've got massive amounts of experience in that area, so I'll probably come to you as well, so we can have a look at how we can share your expertise across the south of Scotland, if that's all right.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, for taking those two questions. It really is an exciting time. If there's no further questions, I'd like to thank our speakers, Senga Greenwood, Ian Barr and Rich Rowe, and I'd like to thank you all for attending. The countdown is on, so please join us again next Tuesday at 11 o'clock when, as Rich has highlighted, we'll be looking at infrastructure and how to get your business cycle ready. Thanks very much.